Get back to this, but what I want to talk about now is social norms. And social norms based on where you folks are right now. And in the major that some of you might be in, some of you might switch out. But the fundamentals of this major is something that has guided me through life and has helped me out, even though technically I am not in the hospitality business anymore. But if you think of any business that you are talking to a single other person, then you are in the hospitality business. And so Dan Ariely, he's an amazing economist, and he wanted to test the theory of us getting paid for our work and see how well we do when we get paid for our work. So what he did is he took a very simple task, but he took a bunch of students and he put them in a room and he said, I'm going to pay you $5 and I just want you to draw as many circles as you feel $5 is worth. Very silly, very dumb exercise, but when they were paid $5, they did 159 circles. And then he took another group, he said, I want you to draw as many circles, I'm going to pay you 50 cents. And it dropped off significantly. There's 101 circles for 50 cents. And then he took another group and he said, I'm not going to pay you anything, how many circles will you do? And they did 168 circles. And the point is that all of us want to help each other out. Volunteering your time is more important to your heart than it is when you get paid. And when you volunteer your time and you believe in a cause, even though this isn't even a cause that anybody believes in, they're just drawing circles. But their obligation to say, I'm volunteering to do this project, makes them work harder than if they were getting paid to do so. Now this is an interesting thing is, if you take away money and you do gifts instead, then the output is almost exactly the same. If I gave you a $100 bottle of wine, or if I gave you a $10 coupon to Giorgio's or something like that, you will produce the same as if I was giving you nothing, because you are working under the same parameters of working together to try to solve something. Now, interesting enough on this last example is if I told somebody that this Godiva box of chocolate is worth $5, or this Snickers bar is worth 50 cents, then you immediately go back to the way you were working when you were getting paid, just by me saying how much the object is worth. That's how much we're framed in our minds to work on money. And so now everybody's saying to me, well, why don't we just not pay anybody anything? This is ridiculous. Well, incentives do work if incentives are for very concrete, mundane tasks. If I had 100 boxes over here, and I said, the fastest person that's going to move these boxes over there, then yes, productivity will go up, because there's no thinking involved. But as soon as you involve some type of thought process, some type of complex cognitive behavior, productivity starts going down with monetary incentives. And the business world really has not grasped onto this. The science of it is 100% clear. The science of it says this is how our minds work. But to business, they really have not figured that out yet. And there are some companies that are doing it, and a very famous example of this is Microsoft came out with their own encyclopedia called Encarta. And they spent millions and millions of dollars putting this software together. And they offered all the bonuses, all the incentives. And then another encyclopedia company comes out where they say do it anytime you want, put whatever you want, and do it for free. And obviously you guys know that Wikipedia won out, and Microsoft had to close down their encyclopedia as of last year. And there's some workplaces that are trying to incorporate this, like the Row business model, where it's results-only work environments, where you're not clocked in like I have to be there at 8 o'clock, I have to be there at 11. but you have to get your results done. And Google does this. And you'll hear about Google a million times before you graduate. But that's the thing, is they incorporate some of these things into their daily environment. And so they tell their employees 20% of your time, which is 1 day a week, you can work on anything you want. And Gmail came out of this. Google News came out of this. Not on a project that they're working on. And it had nothing to do with money. It had to do with understanding that our minds, I don't think the world is changing. I'm not going to sit here and say, it's so much different than it was. I think it always has been, but now we have a better understanding of how it works. And so, just like this research says, I can't take it for what it's worth based on somebody else's book. And I love researching, and I love trying to see interesting things, you know? Because right now you guys have a lot of workload, and then, you know, you got to fit in the party, and you got to fit in everything it is, and it's great. But then once you graduate college, you notice that a lot of people stop there, and they say, well, I don't really need to learn anything else, or I'm just going to sit and watch TV all day. And I can't do that. But I also have to, if I'm going to say these things up here, then I have to do my own project to verify if this is true or not. So in October, I came in, I gave a little lecture, and then at the end, I offered a scholarship. And I offered a scholarship not based on grades, because I was a very bad student, and I couldn't qualify for most of the scholarships. So I needed a scholarship that was going to appeal to anybody. And so my scholarship was that I was going to separate into teams of 2, whoever was interested, and all you had to do was go out and make as many people happy as possible. I didn't care what you did, I didn't care how you framed it, and I didn't expect some big research paper at the end. I said, just send me an email with a couple photos so I know that you did it. Winner gets $1,000. Now it's my own money, so $1,000 is a lot for a research project, but everybody was super excited about it. I had 140 people sign up. I had 70 teams that were gung-ho. They were sending me ideas. They were going to do this. They were going to do this. You know, what do you think about that? What do you think about that? And I was very excited. I gave them 4 months to do it. How many teams completed it? 3. That's 6 people out of 140. And I had the easiest project. But the problem is that I set them up to fail. And everybody's going to say, this isn't me, I wouldn't do that. $1,000, these were the real guidelines that I had going on. And the real guidelines were, 1, I had to make the task as simple as possible so nobody could look at me and say, I didn't know how to do this, I didn't have a computer, I didn't have that. And I had to make the reward big enough so they're like, well, whatever, 20 bucks, I'm not going to do that. So I had to remove those obstacles. But more importantly, I had to make it very vague. If I, at the very same day, held up $1,000 and said, I'll give $1,000 to whoever's going to run around this block with their underwear on, I can guarantee you I would get more than 3 teams. And then I also had to offer a long-term deadline. Because if I said, go out and make as many people happy and email me tonight, I would have a super high response. But we are programmed to delay what we're doing. We are programmed to say, I'll worry about this tomorrow. And then the longer the deadline, the worse off we are. So when you look at somebody like Steve Jobs, or I don't care, any famous person, it takes a lot of everyday boring days to stay on track, to say, I'm going to keep at this, and I'm not going to get distracted by something else. And then I also said, I'm not going to ask the groups at all about their progress. I'm not going to ask them like, hey, did you get a rough draft? What's your idea? Because the problem is, we might look at our bosses, or we might look at our professor as like this person that's kind of on us. But the truth is, we need people on us, because we cannot motivate ourselves. And it was interesting because in the beginning I was supposed to ask you guys this question on whether we were going to start a new class and whether you would want to have 3 term papers due whenever you wanted to turn them in, or 3 papers due set by the professor. And I forgot to do that. So there is research by the same economist, Dan Ariely, who set up 3 classes. One class he said no deadlines, one class he said deadlines set by you, and one class deadlines set by the professor. Who got the best grades? Obviously, the class that had the deadline set by the professor. Second best grades, the deadline set by you. Third worst grades, the ones that had no deadlines.